Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another incredible guest to reintroduce to you now. Dr. Cate Shanahan is a returning guest on our show. Be sure to check out her first appearance in episode 672 of Boundless Body Radio. Dr. Cate Shanahan is the leading authority on nutrition and human metabolism. Dr. Cate is a Cornell-trained physician scientist whose works have inspired entire movements involving bone broth, live culture ferments, and seed oil-free business empires. Together with NBA legend Gary Vitti, she created the LA Lakers Pro Nutrition Program, which has been emulated by elite championship teams around the world. Dedicated to her field, she runs a telehealth practice as well as a health education website, which can be found at drcate.com, and lives with her family on a peaceful lake in Florida. She is a board-certified family physician with over 20 years of clinical experience, and she is also the author of New York Times best-selling books, including The FatBurn Fix, Deep Nutrition, Food Rules, and her latest book, Dark Calories, How Vegetable Oils Destroy Our Health and How We Can Get It Back. She's also the medical and scientific advisor at CB Supplements, overseeing their premium grade multi-collagen protein with our former podcast guest, Charlie Bales. You can find Dr. Cate at www.drcate.com. Dr. Cate Shanahan, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you back to Boundless Body Radio.
It's so great to be back here with you again, Casey. Thank you.
It's just such the highest honor to chat with you. I told you last time I came across your work in an article that was published almost a dozen years ago on a sports website that I had no idea had anything to do with nutrition, and reading about the LA Lakers and discovering how bone broth was helping them recover from injuries. There was that amazing story about Kobe and how he had a terrible ankle sprain and recovered so fast because of your nutritional expertise. It was so inspiring. Deep Nutrition is one of my absolute favorite books, and so it's so cool to be able to chat with you. And your work goes back a very, very long time.
Yes, I've been at this for ages, and it's been great because things are changing.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I can't wait to talk to you about that and about your journey and how you got to where you are today. I did want to actually highlight something that you just told me off air. You're actually working with the university as an honorary position as a lecturer. Is that correct?
Yeah, nutrition and metabolism. And I got the position because one of the world's most respected scientists actually read Dark Calories, and he liked what I said. He's been working in this field himself. His name is Dr. Martin Grutfeld, and I actually did highlight him in the book. And I was a little bit nervous about, would he like what I said? But he really liked it. And he actually, after he reached out to me, he just got nominated like some sort of award for being the top 2% most influential scientists on the globe, which is, good timing. I don't know if he would have reached out to me after that.
That's amazing. Congratulations. I'm sure you are in amazing company over there, and I'm sure you're educating a lot of people, which I think is wonderful. I do have some follow-up questions from our last interview where we talked about your latest book, Dark Calories. I finished reading it. At this point, I hadn't last time. You did an amazing job writing that book, and I really love also that you included a special interview you did with the woman who actually narrated the book, which, again, I want to get to. But selfishly, like I told you earlier, Deep Nutrition is one of my absolute favorite books. It's one that I have referred back to many, many times for lots of different things. And I didn't get to ask you this last time. What kind of led to your writing of that book? Like you have a lot of concepts in that book that really nobody was talking about at the time. Can you tell us how you got from, your training at Cornell to then, maybe changing your mind about a few things and writing the book Deep Nutrition?
Yeah, so I had gone to Cornell because I wanted to be a molecular biologist and genetic engineer because I wanted to get to actually solving the problems. The world's problems at that time were accumulating plastics already. This was in the 1980s. And I wanted to design bacteria that could chew up plastic and digest it. And I realized that genetic engineering was really in its infancy, and doing something like that was going to take decades, and I couldn't wait. But that training in understanding plastics and how they're made, so that we can understand how to break them down, turned out to be really useful in understanding what vegetable oils do in our body. And when I didn't make that kind of connection until I had to, because I got sick, right? So I dropped out of Cornell PhD program. I went to medical school, and there I was hoping to get to the root causes of selfishly my like sports injuries, right? Because I was an athlete and I kept getting tendonitis and bursitis and hip problems and every kind of joint was seemed to like break down for me, and I figured there was something wrong with me, and I wanted to understand what it was, but I did not learn anything like that in medical school. So I was kind of a little disappointed, a little bit of a seeker, and then when I got sick myself, it was really a golden opportunity to fill that gap that had been in my heart all along as a doctor, where I didn't really feel like I was helping my patients. And the connection with plastic was actually really important, because it turns out vegetable oils can polymerize in our cell membranes the same way that plastic would polymerize, on your floor if you're trying to protect it from water. So like that realization was so profound to me that I was inspired to do more and more research, and I just ended up I was going to write this little teeny pamphlet for my patients about here's what vegetable oils are, here's to avoid them, and also sugar's really bad for you too. It was going to just be for my patients, but I found the thing so fascinating that I just kept digging. And yeah, and really the biggest, hugest revelation that I don't even mention in the book, so this is like inside knowledge, is that really nothing in our bodies, nothing about our health is random. Nothing about our health is random. And that was a big revelation as I started doing all the research, because in medical school, we don't go past like, oh, just bad luck or, family history, which is also this another, just it's really another term for bad luck, right? You had the wrong parents, right? So, so I was able to see that nothing was by accident, and that nutrition had an influence on every medical condition that you could possibly name.
Wow. That's incredible. It's really challenging to go back and imagine deep nutrition as a little pamphlet. It's certainly not much of a little pamphlet for what it grew into. If somebody is listening and not watching, you see deep nutrition behind me, and it's about an inch and a half thick, and it is written in very small font. You write in that book about even the connection between not only our physical health but also as aesthetically, like kind of how we look and symmetry and all those things. To your knowledge, are you the only person that had made those kinds of connections?
I am the second.
Okay.
The first is Dr. Weston Price. And actually, there were other people, working when Dr. Weston Price was working. So, who's Dr. Weston Price? He is a dentist that worked at the early 1900s, like 1910, 1920, 1930. And his book came out in the late 1930s, early 1940s. And he said that our diet changes the way we look. And he was not the only person, but that was saying similar things, but he was the most clear about the link between diet and how we grow, and that basically it's not just for looks, it's about health. So he linked the same three things that I link, which is diet, health, and physical appearance. And so that was one of those things that was like, wow, this is so cool. There's no way I could not leave this in a. There's no way I could have a book and not include this, because, like I said, I don't think anyone else has seriously written new information about that. Like people have regurgitated what Price said, but I built on it because there was a new field coming out of epigenetics, and as a former geneticist, I was like, this was another marriage of like my previous to medical school life and this new world of information that my eyes had opened up to after I was injured and just looking for how to get better myself.
Got it. Yeah. Building upon it is a good way to say it. Expounding his work was so incredible. And his timing couldn't have been more perfect, where you have this like confluence at the dates that you said, the 1920s, 1930s. You have the invention of the camera. It's a little bit more practical to take around with him. And we also have a lot of indigenous tribes that we might not even have access to today, because so many of our, civilized practices have bled down into all of those different cultures.
Exactly. And what he did with that camera, and also airplanes, right? So you could travel around the world. And he took a huge camera with him over mountaintops and to isolated communities where they had respected their ancestral traditions and sustained them out of necessity, but also it wasn't just necessity. And he makes that clear too in a way that really resonated with me, is that these people that were, farming the way they had farmed for hundreds of years, just taking the bare minimum of what was beneficial from modern society, like maybe, using like metal instead of rocks and stuff like that. So those cultures, they loved what they were doing. They thought what they were doing was better than the way things were being done in the cities, where sometimes people would leave their communities and then come back because they agreed life was better. And it was hard work, yes, but it was rewarding. And it rewarded you with health for yourself and health for your children, which
Yeah,
is like
that's
the biggest reward you can actually like ever have in life, I think, is our, really, as far as biology is concerned, our purpose is to have children.
yeah. No, that's such a good point. And you mentioned, hard work, and of course, some of these indigenous tribes do have to work quite hard for their existence. But we also hear numbers like the actual amount of time that they do working is actually quite small, and they do spend a lot of time relaxing or dancing or enjoying one another. It sounds almost like wistful to think back on what our existence once was and what it is today.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I always wonder, like, okay, so are they just romanticizing this? Are they not really showing us the hard times? And that's partly probably true. But I still think what we do in our highly technical dependent society is that we just assume newer is better, and we don't look at what we might have lost. And what we've lost is connection to really to our purpose. I think it's really like maybe we've lost the most important thing, because we've lost this realization that by respecting the traditions and by respecting the natural world, we can then have healthy children, which is the purpose, as far as biology is concerned, of human existence, right? It's not so we can get more likes on social media, although
That's
that's
a
fun
very
too.
good point. That is fun too. You're right. Okay, so going back to deep nutrition, I don't want to put you on the spot. I know you wrote it. It's been a minute now since you've written it, but you write about four pillars of human health. I wonder if you could, inform us what those four pillars are, and how has your thinking evolved on those things over time? Now that it's been a while since you've written the book, do you find the argument is stronger? Would you have underplayed different ones or overplayed ones that you brought up in deep nutrition?
I love that question. Yes. No, the argument is the same, and that's kind of points to the foundational truth. So, what are these four pillars and why do they matter? Well, they matter because they are the common elements of all successful cultures. And so Weston Price found 11 cultures around the world that were clearly successful based on the criteria of straight teeth initially. Like that's really all he was really looking for, straight teeth that didn't have a lot of cavities. But it turns out that when your diet produces straight teeth and prevents cavities, it also is good for the rest of the body, and it's good for your children. So he found just healthy people and attractive people, right? So straight teeth, we, I think, instinctively know are an indication of something good about that person, right? Like that reproductive fitness, really, that's like the instinctive. That's why nature, well, I'm getting off track. Sorry. Let me go back to the four pillars. Let me go to that later. So the four pillars are common to all successful cultures, not just the 11 that Dr. Weston Price looked at, but the blue zones that were studied by Dan Buettner. It's a very popular book that came out in the early 2000s, way after, almost 80 years after Weston Price's book came out. And then just like everywhere, like, like the Mediterranean diet truly is got all these going too, and everywhere you look. So, what are the four pillars? They are fresh food, unadulterated by even cooking or dehydrating or anything, just fresh. And then fermented food and sprouted foods, that's the second pillar. Those are foods that started fresh, but we preserved them and then enhanced their nutrition by either fermenting or sprouting them. And then the third pillar I call meat on the bone, just to say that we don't want to throw away the bones and the ligaments and everything like that. It's not like you have to eat, bone and meat all the time, but you don't want to make you like forget about the nutrition. You don't want to forget about the nutritional value of the skin and the ligaments and the joint material and the bone material itself. And you want to make bone broth out of it. So the third pillar could also really be called like, don't forget about bone broth. And the fourth pillar is organ meats, and that is like this nutritional powerhouse that most of us in America just like completely ignore. Don't even think liver is food, or the marrow and bone marrow and things like hearts and kidneys and the bladder and tripe and all of these things that indigenous cultures used and loved. That those are the four pillars. So those are now, not only has it not like, has my mind not changed about that, to go back to the other part of the question, more and more people are doing this. Like since I wrote the first edition of Deep Nutrition, which had come out in 2008, I got involved with the Lakers, and we got a lot of publicity around the Lakers and how their diet was unique. And we were doing bone broth there. We were doing fermented foods. Kombucha was their substitute for soda. And kombucha is a fermented food. And we were using traditional fats and other stuff too. But the diet got a ton of publicity, just a ton of publicity. And so many people have since reached out to me to say that I read about you, I read your book, and it inspired me to create a bone broth company. Or, oh gosh, we've got a little fermentation company, and your book just like inspired us to keep going because, now we know it's really important. It's not just a niche, it's really important for human health. And other people have written books on the topics that my book was about. So it's just not revitalized, but reaffirmed the absolute truth of what went into deep nutrition.
Yeah, wow. I absolutely love that. Thank you for updating us on that. And I know you've updated your book as well, but the main core tenets still stand and are proving to be more true now than they were before. Which again kind of leads us to your latest book that I really want to chat with you about. Like I said earlier, you did an amazing job writing it, and it's so funny and paradoxical that I'm listening to your book, and you're talking about this process and this like chemical that people need hazmat suits for, and yet like within the same sentence you'll say that and then say like we need all these chemicals and hazmat suits and protective equipment so that we can get this thing safe to eat. And it's like, what do you mean safe to eat? That stuff sounds so nasty and terrible. And it must have been such a cool way for you to kind of set that up to say that like this is what we consider safe to eat, and it's not even close. It's so gross.
Yeah, it's absurd that the seed oils had flown under the radar for, 100 years without being seriously investigated by anyone other than just a few niche scientists and myself. But now we again, like this is another one of these validating things that in deep nutrition, I did warn people about the harms of vegetable oil. And I think this actually ties to current events. So what you just said about these harmful compounds that develop in seed oils, the compounds that develop in seed oils include things like acrylamide, which are aldehydes, and that's where the hazmat suit come in. If you're handling acrylamide, you need to be wearing, a gas mask and stuff like that. That's how toxic it is. It is not controversial that the compound acrylamide and these other alpha beta unsaturated aldehydes are toxic. What is controversial, shamefully, is the idea that foods cooked in seed oils develop these toxins. And I say shamefully because the science is clear. It is an open secret in the vegetable oil industry that is why they have to do all of that refining that is so intensive and required to make these things safe to eat, because the seed oils will deteriorate and toxins will form in them. But so the problem that has to do with current events is that acrylamide and these alpha beta unsaturated aldehydes are neurotoxins. They disrupt brain development. And we have so many people in the world trying to get to the root cause of autism. Well, I wrote about it in Deep Nutrition, the new edition chapter, has a chapter called Brain Killer: Why Vegetable Oils Are Your Brain's Worst Enemy. And I should say that I don't mean olive oil. When I say vegetable oil, I mean a specific set, 8 oils. I call them the hateful eight. I'm sure you'll probably put those 8 in the link below. But I can list them out later. But I want to finish this thought. So the why are vegetable oils the brain's worst enemy? Because when you eat foods that contain vegetable oils, especially if they were heated, they contain significant amounts of neurotoxins. And the neurotoxins can lead to autism, right? They can lead to many other brain diseases. That's why the chapter is called Brain Killer, not Vegetable Oils Cause Autism. But it could be called Vegetable Oils Called Autism because all the things that I say about the toxicity of these oils can contribute to the pathogenesis of autism. They can also contribute to the pathogenesis of Alzheimer's. And pathogenesis is just a fancy word for the development of. Right. That's what the pathologists are, the doctors. So the pathologists are the ones who look at the cells on slides and see what went wrong in this brain cell, what went wrong in this tissue to understand the link between why did this person develop the disease? Right. So, and what I did was I looked at all of that evidence and I said, vegetable oils can do all of these pathological changes. Vegetable oils can cause all of these pathological changes in the brain. And one of the key things that we know is associated with autism in terms of brain development going wrong is the layering of the cells in our brain. So did you know that like all of our brain is like this incredible processing system? And there are 6 layers that have to develop normally in all of our sensory processing systems. And autism is an abnormality of our sensory processing systems. And what happens when these layers don't develop normally is we cannot process sensations normally. And that's what autistic people have trouble with. They cannot turn a human face expressing an emotion, they cannot turn that into a human face expressing an emotion that they can understand. Their brains do not have the processing ability. And when I say autistic people, I mean autistic people with severe sensory processing disorder, because it is a spectrum and, not all autistic people have the same problems. In fact, many autistic people are relatively unique in the world because when we're talking about mucking up the development of a brain with a toxin, it's not going to happen the same way in everybody. It's just like if you start, smashing glasses, right? You start breaking wine glasses. Well, the broken pieces are going to be different for every wine glass, right? So destruction takes many forms, but perfection, the perfect development, the ideal development of a brain that creates a healthy human brain takes one form. There's variations, there's natural variability, but the non-disrupted development creates natural variability. And we've got this really dangerous idea going on that autism is not a disease, that is just human variation. And no, there's a distinct difference. Human variation exists within health, right? You have some people who are outgoing, some people who are shy, some people who are good at telling jokes, some people who are terrible at telling jokes. That would be me. That doesn't mean I'm on a spectrum of any sort. It just means that that's a natural variability. So there's healthy variability that gives us personalities and proclivities, and then there's unhealthy variability that gives us the autism spectrum. And that is so important of a concept to understand. And again, I don't hear anyone thinking through the process of autism from start to finish like this. So I think that's really, really important, what I just said. And I kind of wish I had said that in deep nutrition, but I give you all the support for all the ways that the seed oil destroys our brain and how it leads to dementia and strokes and migraines and everything else. So please read the book.
Yeah. Please read the book. It's a wonderful read, like I said. Yeah, and that is absolutely fascinating. I'm glad you went there with that question. Most people, I think the term seed oil is becoming a little bit more accepted and ubiquitous. We mostly just called it vegetable oil for the longest time. And I could forgive anybody for walking up to the aisle in the grocery store that has all this like kind of clean looking golden type of oils in these clear bottles that's easy to see, and like it looks fairly benign. Like what is the processing behind this stuff that most people don't really understand? We alluded to it a little bit earlier. And how did we get in the habit of calling this stuff vegetable oil when none of it comes from vegetables?
Yeah, so let's start with the history a little bit real quick. So, really, the term vegetable oil came about in the late 1900s when the processing was like got to the point where you could actually extract oils from cottonseed and stuff like that. And they wanted to distinguish it from whale oil. So whale oil used to be one of the main oils used for candles and lamps, right? I mean, it's really so horrible the way we would take these beautiful creatures and turn them into a lamp or a candle or, ugh. But back then, they just created the term just to distinguish it from that, from whale oil. So as the industry progressed and there were more and more vegetable oils, they just threw soy oil and corn oil and all of those in there. And olive oil originally was its own thing because olive oil was food. These other oils, soy oil, when it was first invented, a lot of people don't realize soy oil was not consumed in China, was not consumed in Asia, was not a traditional oil. It's totally industrial. And it was used as an industrial oil, right? For making lamps, for making soaps, for lubricants, and so on. And then so we called it vegetable oil. I called it vegetable oil, and other people talking about it called it vegetable oil. But like somewhere in there, somewhere in the past probably 50 years, people pointed out, well, it's really not from vegetables. We should say something a little different because it turns out these are all seeds. Let's just call it seed oil. So that was a very informal term. And but some people started using the term seed oil. And, I've used the terms interchangeably, but neither is actually the right term because there are seed oils that are healthy. So the right term, I had to come up with a better term. And so I came up with the term, the hateful eight. And actually, it wasn't me. I didn't come up with it. My husband did. So I was like, it's hard to describe these things because I just have to list them out every time. And he said, oh, okay, well, how many are there? And I said eight. And he said, oh, all right, well, that's easy. Hateful eight. He was good at coming up with stuff like that.
Nice.
Yeah, so the eight bad ones are corn, canola, cottonseed, soy, sunflower, safflower, rice bran, and grapeseed. And what they all have in common is that is two things. They are very high in polyunsaturates, and the crude oil is inedible when it is first extracted and has to be refined to become safe to eat and like palatable. And the problem is that polyunsaturates are prone to turning into plastic in our cells, as well as deteriorating into toxins like acrylamide. And the other problem is that the refining removes most of the nutrients, and that is an under-discussed problem. A lot of people don't realize what goes into refining these oils. Even dietitians, like they'll say, oh, soy oil is really high in vitamin E. Most of the vitamin E is removed, and then they put some of it back. But because the oil also has all the other stabilizing factors removed, a lot of that vitamin E is just consumed by the cooking process, so that it's not getting any nutrition. And there's other nutrients that are missing, like phospholipids and antioxidants. minerals. So it's devoid of nutrition, and it really should not be considered a food. And when, like you brought up, like they're clear, like they're clear. Well, food should not be, colorless, odorless, and flavorless. Usually that indicates there's not a lot of nutrition in it. And in this case, that is absolutely true. There is almost no nutrition in these oils other than, a couple of these essential fatty acids that the dietitians love talking about. Like that's the one thing they've got that, your body cannot make, these omega-6s and omega-3s that are in some seed oils. And well, that's why we got to eat it. And that's why we need to limit our saturated fat. That's their entire argument. And it's very, very superficial. There's a lot that they are missing.
Yeah, for sure. And you're the perfect person to ask this question, but maybe we can go into a little bit more detail about the different types of fat, because I think people have the association that vegetable oil is better for me. There's polyunsaturated fats that they're promoted as being essential, which they are to some extent. And we all know saturated fat is bad for us. We should not eat saturated fat. Every box of food in the grocery store says you shouldn't have that. So can you tell us about the different kinds of fat and what is it specifically about the polyunsaturates that you mentioned that make it so harmful?
So the polyunsaturates have two unsaturated bonds or three unsaturated bonds, or even more than that. And what does that mean? That means that there's two carbons bonded to themselves. So it's a chemical term that if you're a chemist, that's, meaningful. But if you're not, it's totally abstract. So how does that translate to anything important? That it turns out that those unsaturated bonds are weak and they will break. And when they break, that gives an opportunity for bad things to happen. Two types of bad things. One is they can just deteriorate into toxins, and the other is that the separate molecules will actually bond to each other, which is a process of polymerization. And so we actually do eat polymerized garbage when we're eating French fries that are fried in these oils. And that's like eating, just like, we're worried about having plastic, microplastics. Well, French fries have essentially microplastics in them because there's polymerized polyunsaturated fatty acid breakdown products that are inedible and toxic. And this is, this is not me making this stuff up. This is just basic chemistry. There are hundreds of journals that say what I'm saying. They're just not published where dietitians will ever read. And even if they did, it's probably so technical, they wouldn't understand it.
That's absolutely crazy to comprehend. And then comparing that to the saturated fat, what is it about the saturated fat that is actually really good for us as far as our health goes that has been, kind of brushed under the rug for so many years?
So yeah, saturated fat is stable. It's basically something that you can heat and it will not deteriorate or break down into toxins or promote polymerization or damage the other molecules. So saturated fat is a nutrient. It's calories. It's doesn't sure our body can make it. And the dietitians take that to mean that we don't want to eat it because our body can make it. And then we'll be getting too much and that will be unhealthy. And there's no foundation for that reasoning at all. It's just like the body's not stupid. Saturated fat is very important. It's foundational to our body's function. We need it for our cell membranes. We need it for energy. It's beneficial. And period, right? So it preserves our food as well, and it preserves a lot of nutrients. So it has a lot. We need it. We just need it in our food. We've been eating foods that are rich in saturated fat. So for anyone to say that, you have to watch your saturated fat, or it's not, especially if they say saturated fat is not good for you because your body can make it and then you're going to get too much, that is really very ignorant. The body makes molecules that are essential for the body, like just like with cholesterol. Cholesterol is the same error. The body needs cholesterol for our cell membranes. The body needs saturated fat for our cell membranes. These are important molecules, and the body makes them because they are so important that it wants to make sure we always have some on hand.
Yeah. Very well said. Another type of fat that you write about, which I find absolutely fascinating, and what most people would probably know and understand, is that trans fat. We know that trans fat is terrible for health. We removed it from the food system here in the United States, but there were some unintended consequences that you write about that. So can you tell us, what is trans fat? Why? Yeah, why is it not good for us? And also, what did we create when we removed it from our food?
Well, we created a monster when we removed trans fat from our food because even though trans fat is generally unnatural molecules that have a kink in the molecule that nature does not make very often, and that's a the kink is just called a trans bond, right? So earlier I mentioned double bonds. So double bonds can have the more common shape, which is called cis, and a less common shape, which is called trans. Um, Again, just kind of chemical trivia. But what it translates to is something that nature didn't really make or plan for us to eat very much of. And because of that, our body has a hard time metabolizing it. And it can actually block some very important enzymes that are absolutely essential for our brain and for many normal processes in the body. And so trans fats are harmful, but they don't polymerize, they don't deteriorate into toxins that turn into, such severe things you got to wear a hazmat suit to deal with them. So trans fats are bad, but the reason they're not as bad as vegetable oils is that they are heat stable. They're actually a monounsaturated fat. So polyunsaturated fat, you have those two double bonds. Monounsaturated fat, olive oil is famous for being so healthy because it's got monounsaturated fat. And, of course, that's erroneous because most of nutrition science is erroneous. Monounsaturated fat is not a miracle molecule either. It's just something else that is a nutrient that's not toxic. Olive oil is not toxic, but seed oils are toxic. So the idea, though, was that, well, there were a lot of associations between people who were eating fried food and who were getting sick. And there were a lot of animal studies that showed that these trans fats lead to obesity beyond their calorie counts and have other ill effects. And I think all of those researchers were not like giving enough background on why trans fats were invented in the first place. And it was to prevent the oxidation and the damage that occurs when you use soy oil, liquid oil. Right? Oh, I didn't say this, but and I should. This is really important. The process of the process of creating a trans fat is called hydrogenation, and it's also known as hardening because you take a liquid like cottonseed oil and you make it solid like margarine. And so the scientists who wrote about the harms of trans fats kind of missed a really important point that these hardened molecules were more stable to heat than the oils that they were originally made from. And because they missed that point, when the trans fat ban went into effect, nobody was really raising alarms about how, well, that means that we're going to be putting these dangerous liquid oils into fryers. And that's what has happened now. And we are seeing the consequences now. This is having like real life devastating effects on our health that we've made this switch.
What are some of those consequences? That's probably a nice place to go after this. Is like when we look at a frying vat and we see, that the liquid fat is being reheated over and over and over again. What are some of the damaging things that are being manifest in our bodies?
Well, so when we eat French fries, we are eating uh, foods that have the equivalent toxicity of smoking cigarettes in a 1-to-1 ratio. So if you smoke a cigarette, you get a certain amount of toxin. If you eat a French fry, a deep fried French fry in one of these fast food restaurants, cooked in one of these oils, you get an equal amount of similar types of toxins, also called aldehydes, alpha beta unsaturated aldehydes. These are cancer causing, these are disruptive to our mitochondria, and they completely destroy our health and make us gain weight. And so we're seeing some bad things happening in the headlines. We're seeing that cancer now is increasing in people under 50. Heart attacks are increasing in people under 50. And it's not that these things aren't affecting people older than 50. It's that the signal is a lot easier to detect in people under 50. And the other thing that they do is they destroy our mitochondria. So that has the effect of making us hungry all the time and we get fat. And there are some really important statistics that no one's paying attention to that support a link between seed oils in the food supply and obesity. And I don't know if you caught those when you read the book.
Yeah, for sure.
There,
Super
there,
interesting.
there was a graph that where I show that between the year 2000 and 2020, and between the years 2000 and 2020, our intake of these liquid oils basically doubled. So it went from around 30 pounds per person per year, which is a lot, up to 60, right? Because people eat a lot of fried food. And it's not just French fries, it's also chips and crackers and like a million things that you will buy in the grocery store. Even healthy foods, right? Like pre-made dinners that you would buy at a Trader Joe's or Whole Foods or health food stores. So we doubled from 30 pounds per person to 60 pounds per person in that 20-year period. But we did not increase our calories very much. It was something like the average person got something like 2,400 calories, and it went up to like 2,080 calories per person in that 20-year time period. But what happened to our weight? It doubled. I'm sorry. What happened to our obesity rates? Our obesity rates doubled without increasing our calories significantly. The only variable that increased significantly was these hateful eight seed oils. Sugar went down. High fructose corn syrup went down. Total carbohydrates went down. Red meat, which is blamed for everything, that also went down, right? Animal fat, that went down. The only variable that correlates with the doubling of obesity is seed oils. And how are dietitians and nutritionists not like, how are they like when I bring this up, I haven't brought it up to like a professional scenario, right? In a conference, I haven't been able to, have the privilege of being able to present this to enough serious people. But on social media, what happens is all the know-it-all types are like, well, that's just a correlation. It's not a causation. But the other ones don't correlate. So it means that it's something we should look into further. And they just leave it at that. They say, well, they say it's just a correlation. And then at the side of their mouth, they'll say, well, they're in a lot of junk foods too. At the same time, they'll also say junk foods are full of animal fat and saturated fat. So you see, there's just all these disconnections in the minds of dietitians and nutritionists who are saying seed oils are not bad for us. They actually, the claim used to be seed oils are healthy, right? But you don't see people saying that too much anymore. So that's progress too.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. When we're talking about reheating these oils from the spectrum of how we can consume them, how we can purchase these seed oils, we can get them from the bottle. We haven't cooked with them yet; they're in their raw form. We can get them in products like you said, chips and crackers. Salad dressings might be a good example where you're probably not going to be heating up a salad dressing versus a frying vat where the oil is getting heated over and over and over again, hopefully replaced in a reasonable amount of time. But even that doesn't seem to happen in your smaller mom or pop kind of restaurants like you write about in the book. But do you see any of those things as different levels of harm, or are they all incredibly harmful?
There's different levels of serious harm. Like it's not like I would recommend salad dressings or mayonnaise or other like aiolis that have not been repeatedly heated. It's not like I would recommend those because first of all, remember empty calories. There's almost no nutrition and it's very high calorie because it's fat. But secondly, because there are toxins in there when they leave the factory, and this has been proven as well. It's rarely been tested, right? The FDA doesn't require this testing, even though these are novel substances. These have not been tested. They were not tested before being released into the American public. And literally one scientific investigative group has evaluated seed oils as they leave the factory, from the day that you open it to without even heating it, just letting it sit on the shelf to the next day, to the next day, to the next day. There's one group that systematically, one in the world ever, that systematically looked at this. And so it's incredibly important research. And again, this is like the dietitians won't pay attention to it because they don't understand it at all. They don't even know it exists or that it's important. So it's really, I keep picking on dietitians and nutritionists, but it's also doctors, it's cardiologists, it's neurologists, it's really all the health practitioners because we are systematically miseducated. And that is another thing that very few people, nobody really is talking about. And the secret intention of me writing all of my books is I really want healthcare practitioners like you, you're a healthcare practitioner, to read them because it's complicated material, but once you understand it in the true depth, I think you can become more, you really have to understand it at the true depth to become resilient to the onslaught of people out in the world who will tell you that you're wrong. You have to really know what you're thinking. You have to know the thought process and the deeper truths that these people telling us we're wrong don't even know exist. They don't understand them.
Yeah, you've written about this probably in all of your books, but in particular in Dark Calories, you definitely write about this. In your opinion, is the whole cholesterol hypothesis, the heart health hypothesis, is that the one linchpin that if that goes, like the medical industry, the pharmaceutical industry, the food industry would all suffer mightily if it was just that one thing that finally just went away?
We are eating seed oils because of the cholesterol theory of heart disease, because seed oils lower cholesterol, whereas the fats we used to eat, the animal fats, they raised cholesterol. And when a man named Ansel Keys came along with the idea that cholesterol, that must clog our, or that must be the cause of heart disease, because I think we've seen it in the plaque, so that must be the cause, that must be the whole cause. That theory was devastating to our health because the American Heart Association basically just took that idea and didn't test it before they started promoting it as gospel truth in cookbooks that they would endorse. You see, so they kind of did an end run around academic medicine by just making sort of a blanketing the media and the airwaves with this idea that Ansel Keys, their hero, had promoted that he had found the root cause of heart disease. It was cholesterol. It wasn't smoking. It was cholesterol. That's what Ansel Keys said. It's not smoking, it's cholesterol. Not true. We know this is not true now, but people did not know then.
Wow. Wow, that's absolutely crazy. I just thought it was to the extent of like you're not going to get a Christmas card from them or something. But
Right.
yeah, the implications of what you're writing about are very serious. And you think you're
Yeah.
talking about multi-trillion dollar industries that could all suffer huge hits if people knew this information. And hopefully we're addressing an audience that is, at least a little bit aware of the harms of seed oils. Maybe is not the first time that they're hearing this. For somebody who maybe is hearing this for the first time and thinking, well, gosh, I want to get these out of my diet, how do you practically help people understand, how do you do this? So practically, what things do people need to be aware of to start to take steps in the right direction as far as getting seed oils out of their diet?
Yeah, that's really the most important question is how you actually make it possible because they're in probably 80% of the foods that you would be buying if you weren't looking out to avoid them, when you just casually shop in the grocery store. So that's why I've created a, sort of a step-by-step process to follow. In the last third of Dark Calories, I give you like the good fats that you should buy. I give you a bunch of recipes. I give you a 2-week plan. And also when I work with people, I kind of give you more of the one-on-one hand-holding support that helps you really reshape your habits in a way that is going to make this big change feel very manageable. So that's it's a process though, right? Like you don't, some people have kind of done it overnight, but those are people that are already rare, right? There's like a few people who can cook everything from scratch. They just love cooking. They've got lots of kids. They make time to do this somehow miraculously. Like not a lot of people have their lives oriented around food, which well, getting back to Weston Price, all of our ancestors were obsessed with food and nutrition and getting the best tasting, most nutritious foods into their bodies by way of the food that they grew and their dinner plates. And so like that is what it takes to be healthy. We have to be obsessed with it. Now we have all these modern conveniences, so we don't have to dedicate like 8 hours a day to it the way we used to anymore. We've got slow cookers, we've got people who can shop for us. I mean, we've got grocery stores. We don't have to farm, right? So like we can do it. People do it. People have made it happen. But the world doesn't teach you those habits anymore. So people like you and people like me have to develop programs and support for folks who really want to change their lives for the better permanently.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I love the way that you set that up and explain that, because it's like, it's not like this is the 1980s where it's just low fat everything. Like there is fat that you can and should have, and it's tasty and it's, good for you. And we can make some really good replacements that are going to be a net benefit versus just like a total annihilation, elimination style, that we did in the low fat Snackwells era. And yeah, one of the cool things about, writing the books is it's an amazing resource. Anybody can buy your books and read them. And the audiobooks that I have are all wonderful. And I love revisiting them. But also, yeah, we are talking a little bit about the practical application of some of this stuff. And that's really kind of where your work has shifted a little bit in recent years, is really trying to help people on the ground with different programs and services that you offer. Can you highlight that a little bit, and how you're trying to help get that kind of word out and really help people on the ground?
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing that I want to help people with the most is to realize that when you take the time to reorient your priorities of your food priorities a little bit, it does take time. It takes learning, takes spending time, reading, listening to podcasts, or working with me, or taking one of my courses. When you do that, you get time back, because the way I've designed my course is that the first thing that you experience is better brain function. And better brain function, when you have, you won't realize, if you are a seed oil eater, ladies listening to me right now, I can tell you from my own personal experience that I had no idea that my brain wasn't functioning quite right. Like I thought, I'd gone to medical school. I went to Cornell. I thought, my brain must be doing something right, right? But once I changed my diet, and embraced butter. Like that was one of the best things about this whole thing, is that every grocery store sells butter, and yes, anyone can buy it. So I started eating more butter, no more vegetable oils. I realized that my brain was functioning better. And when your brain isn't functioning right, that is the thief of time. So when your metabolism is disrupted by seed oils, your brain doesn't work right, and time slips away from you because you cannot organize. You actually lose something very important called executive function. Most people do, many people do. They have impairments in the ability to organize and plan how they are going to get through their day. And that makes tasks that are complicated seem impossible. And when you start eating healthy, just like in the very first day, you can start to have better focus, and then you'll be better, even better the next day. And it's got a positive, like snowballing set of benefits that can really help you turn your life around.
Such a great point and a great way to end this conversation. Yeah, just that one point alone, that you have no idea how good you could feel, how much more time you could have in your life that these silly seed oils are stealing away from people. Your message is absolutely timeless. It ages very, very well. Like I said in the beginning, it's such an honor to get to chat with you and learn from you. So much fun and such an honor. Please, if you don't mind, tell us where we can go and where the audience can go to find you and connect with you and your work.
Please visit my website, which is drcate.com. That's drcate.com. And sign up for my newsletter, because I am currently working on a course, and that should be released fairly soon. So you'll be notified. And the course, I hope, is going to be, kind of revolutionary, because it's going to help people work with their appetites. It's going to help you kind of create your own personalized, program for rehabilitating your health for the rest of your life. That's why it's taken me so long to get this thing together, because there's a lot of revolutionary things that I think are just going to really, really help a lot of people. So please sign up. I'm also on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at the same handle, which is at sign Dr. Kate Shanahan, Dr. Kate Shanahan.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Cool.
thanks.
Yeah, thank you. We will link all of that in the show notes. And like I said, we're just so grateful for you and your tireless work in this field to be able to get this out in multiple different ways to people. It's just really cool and inspiring. And yeah, just so grateful for you and all your work. And thank you so very much for taking time out of your busy life to be on our show today. We really appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me back. It's really been a pleasure to speak with you again.
Thank you so very much. This really means a lot. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.